Now I go for walks, to the movies, maybe to a bar. I have a seat on the same old bench to watch the children play. You know, tomorrow is their future, but for me, it's just another day. They all gather around me. They seem to know my name. We laugh, tell a few jokes, but it still doesn't ease my pain. Now I know I can't hide from my memory. For day after day I've tried. I keep saying she'll be back, but today again I lied. Oh, I see her face everywhere I go, in the street and even at the picture show. Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her? Oh, I hear her voice as the cold winds blow, and the sweet music on my radio. Have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her? Why, oh my, does he have to leave and go away? Oh yeah. Oh, I've been used to having someone to lean on, and I'm lost, baby, I'm lost. Oh.
Hello, I'm Robert Berry,
And I'm Lamont Greenfield.
and we're former members of Power Bandit Show. And the clip that you saw, a little singing in the beginning of this interview, was just a little taste of something that we haven't been able to sing together for over 30 years now.
Yeah.
And this is the first time we've been able to put our voices together in that time, and we just wanted to leave a little keepsake there for the people that this really matters to me. I'm trying to show my appreciation at this point, Lamont, and talk a little bit about how Power Band affected my life, and let two very important people in my life know how I feel about them for doing what they did for me in that time.
Well, who that might be?
First and foremost, I have to say Miss Carol Burnett, our manager, and along the way she introduced us to a gentleman named Billy Ray. We all know him as Fats, though.
Fats.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, we got to make sure we talk about that. But right now, I am real curious because by the time I came into the band, it was already moving on.
Right.
It was established. And you were there for the beginning. So why don't you tell everybody how Power Band started?
Well, it started as a group of guys had nothing else to do, played football a lot over on B Street off of Benning Road, Southeast Washington, D.C. And we finally realized, I knew then that I had talent, and I noticed these other guys were interested. And we started in a basement. We were buying the cheapest, it was all we could afford, cheapest guitars, instruments. Our mothers would help us out financially because they started to believe and see that we were interested in music. And a lot of people have come through what has started. And I would say a year or two later, after really putting in the hard basement work and the neighborhood listening to us, we got an opportunity to play at a at a school thing for I would call it just a school function. This lady heard us and wanted us to come and play, and it kind of like took off from there. You know what I'm saying? We played at a lot of schools, and my memory gets kind of like, cause I'm 50 something years old now. Don't tell nobody. But anyway, I learned that, and then my mother and who he just mentioned, Miss Carol Burnett, and a couple of the other band members at the time, parents, got all involved into what we were doing. and they really tried to push and believe in everything that we would like to do. So they took off and they turned their homes into offices and put in file cabinets and desks and started. And first of all, went and took the name down to the Department of Record of Deeds at where you go get things patented at. And she had the name. They had the name patent, so nobody would steal it. And then they started a fan club, and we had secretaries. Yay! And we were young boys, but we got a lot of discipline, and they kept us off the streets. And we looked forward to rehearsing every day, and we did 7 days a week. I remember the times: 7:30 to 10 o'clock. I remember a few of them had to come all the way across town just to come to rehearsal, by bike, by bus, and any means possible. But it came to the point where we would even spend the weekends there, and actually, I would say, sleep with our instruments. We clean them on the weekend, things like that, you know. So, and it grew, and then some people fell off because eventually it became a serious thing. It was for a while. It was fun. Oh yeah, playing here, playing there, da 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 da. We started making money. Then we started getting gigs. Then it started getting serious because we started getting older, and life has a way of putting something in your face to remind you that if you're gonna go serious with this, or you're just wasting your time. So it became serious, and we started weaning out those who, well, it didn't have to personally wean them out. They wind up weaning themselves out, realizing that, you know, you had to be on a certain level to be, you know, part of what was about to happen. So we went through some people in the group. You know, some people we realized were just getting in the group just to be seen, notoriety, or women chasing them and all that, or girls chasing us. They just wanted to be that part, and they didn't even have the talent that it took. So, but was no love lost and all that. You know, if you couldn't sing and you was in a group, and we found out that you didn't, you still could be in a group, but you wouldn't be up there. You'd probably be like current equipment or something like that. You know, or riding with us somewhere. But that's where it started. And I believe I was like 16, 17 years old. And all the guys decided that Lamont should be the leader. I think they did it because my mother was the only one at the time who had a basement and a place to rehearse.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at this guy, I felt you used me. Nah, I have lots of love for it. But when it came down to the real original members of Power Band and Show, I have to give a shout out to Kevin Sims, Earl Duncan, Robert Burry, Dexter and Anthony Jordan, and the ones that were pioneers who was there when someone was out at the moment. I had to give Derek Williams a shout out because he was the drummer at the time, and Butch Johnson, who played guitar for about 6 months. But basically the Power Band consisted of Robert, myself, D&E, they called Dexter and Anthony, and Kevin Sims and Earl Duncan. And that was the Power Band, because we were the ones that really took it to another level and had to go through the ups and downs of traveling wherever the shows were, up against some real musicians. But see, one thing that these other groups that didn't have that we did have, they had everything we wanted. They had the best equipment, they had the best presentations, which made us get creative later on in life. But anyway, they never had the vocal that we had. You know, our vocals were actually our instruments. You know, when there were horn parts and songs to be learned, we sang them because we didn't have horns, so we had to sing those parts. So to make you think that, oh, that sounds just like that song. That song got them horns. I can hear horns. But that's what we did, and that's how Power Band started. Now, you, my brother, I don't know where to begin. You know, how did you come about getting acquainted with us?
I was doing solo singing, solo acts on my own. I had just recently did a solo performance at Anacostia. I was a senior at Anacostia, and they had a seniors talent show. And prior to that, I was just basically getting the feel of coming out of street corner symphony groups and little groups in my neighborhood. But at the same time, I have to say this: when I met Paul Band the show at this, it was a talent show at the Panorama Room in Southeast DC. And I was doing a song called Reasons, and I won the most outstanding performing acts. And when I got that, Carol Burnett came to me and gave me her business card and asked me to come to a rehearsal for Power. And when I showed up, I thought about the night before when I saw you guys playing, and I was really impressed. I was really thoroughly impressed. Kenny Bush on that bass just caught my attention, and Earl Duncan, his foot was just amazing to me on that bass drum.
Yeah,
and I heard how they were just so in the pocket with that music y'all was playing. I was more than happy to come to a rehearsal because Miss Burnett asked me to come down and do an audition. So when I showed up for that audition, no one was there, and one of the secretaries, your next door neighbor, Margot, she came outside her house and asked me, was I Robert Berry? And I told her yes. And she told me Carol left a message for me to come to a block party that you guys were doing a benefit. Yeah. And I said, okay, I'll go over there to the block party. So I thought I was going to watch y'all play. And as soon as I approached Miss Burnett, she looked at me and smiled, and I looked at her and said hello. And she told me hi and pointed at the microphone and told me to go ahead and sing. And I looked at her and said, I'm supposed to be out here for an audition. You know, you guys are doing a show, and I never hit a tune with you before. Didn't have a clue what your sounds were like or in terms of your songs. And so when she told me to get behind the mic, I just went up there and I got behind that microphone, and I used a little trick that I learned in the trade called a split second. I would read lips where I could if I was familiar with a song, or I would hear the vowels being pronounced where I was lost, and no one in the audience could tell that I never sung a song with you guys before. They thought I was a late arrival, you know?
Yeah.
And from that day on, that was the beginning of my birth in Power Band and Show. But I also had to put this in there, that at that time, that was probably one of the most life-saving moments in my life, because I was living in a neighborhood where I had a lot of thugs around. And I was into thug life as a real young kid, you know, but I realized I had a talent. And this is one thing that Carol never knew, you know. The opportunity that she gave me to perform with Power took me off the streets. You know, I dedicated myself because...
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What were the streets like? I mean, I didn't know you before you got in the band, and even the street part that you mentioned about now, I never knew the whole time you were in the band. And here we are 30 years later, and you're telling me that you had a new life, a different life before you got with Power. So I just was curious of what that kind of life was.
See, that's how...
So, remember we got children watching.
Yeah.
And,
so, y'all don't see our camera.
But I remember also that you weren't that old either.
No, I wasn't. I was just getting ready to graduate high school.
Right.
And so, therefore, I had like a criminal lifestyle starting at the age of 12. 12 years old, yes. I was pretty much dealing with older cats in my neighborhood. And
they were older?
Oh, definitely older. I was 12 years old, and I was dealing with grown men. You know, I was learning how to survive in the streets from people anywhere from 4, 5, 6 to some of them even 10 to 12 years older than I. I dealt with kids that were not really kids. We had to grow up fast. So from the age of 12 is where the danger of being out in the streets in Southeast DC had me pretty much caught up. You know, and the lifestyle I was living, it was all that I knew until I started trying to cultivate my talent when I was doing those solo acts. And that's something that I'd like to really thank Carol for today, because when she gave me that opportunity to perform with Power, and I just automatically after that block party, I was hooked. You know, I was just a part of Power from that day forward, because the next thing I knew, I was on the back porch building a coffin for a show we were doing. For some Funkadelic, that is. I wasn't trying to kill nobody.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a weird show.
Yeah, and for Cosmic Slop.
Cosmic Slop.
And that gave me a chance to use my creativity in music. That gave me a chance to grow in music. And Carol gave me that opportunity, and I never looked back towards the street life after that.
Yes,
You know, she really, really, I would have to say, she played a magnificent part in saving my life as a youth.
I guess so. If you was out there at 12,
Because at
and
that
it
time,
wasn't that opportunity, hey, coming to this audition, who knows how your life would have turned out.
I thought that my lifespan would go to 21. If I made 21 years old, to me at that time, because I used to think about that when I was like 13 and 14, and as many friends that I had that were dying out in the streets, I thought that maybe if I got to be 21, that would be a lifetime for me. But through the grace of God and Carol, putting Carol in my life and taking me away from that type of lifestyle, I was able to develop into my manhood with Power Band and Show. And another thing she did for us, we were doing a benefit show at McDonald's.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And I remember this cat showed up and was just staring at us, and I noticed he went over and started talking to Carol.
Right.
And I was like, well, I wonder what's up with him, because this was a benefit show, you know.
Right.
So I was like, okay. So after we finished and packed up, she introduced us to the gentleman. His name was Billy Ray.
Billy Ray.
Yeah, Billy Ray.
Right.
And then all of a sudden that name came out. Yeah, my name is Billy Ray, but you can call me Fats. And I want to do something with you guys. And I was like, well, what you want to do with us, man?
Yeah.
He said, I want to take you in that basement, get you off the stage for, what's it, 6 weeks?
It was 30 days.
You said 6 weeks, bro.
said
It was 6 weeks.
I don't think we could take it after.
It was 30 years ago. Y'all gotta forgive him. It was a 6-week program. He said 6 weeks. I want to put y'all through a regimen, and at the end of that regimen, I'm gonna give y'all a chance to do a tape and see how you progress. It was 6 weeks. I guarantee you, 6 weeks. And during that time, we learned the things that we needed to learn from Fats about showmanship. And I kept wondering, well, what did he mean? Because I thought at that time that Carl was letting our natural talent flow. And like you said, all the bands that we were playing up against and the successes that we had at the shows that we did, I was wondering, well, what more can we possibly do?
Yeah.
And then he started looking at our strengths and our weaknesses. And he really, really put me in my place with what I needed to do on stage to be a professional performer.
Yeah.
You know, I really think he did that for me. And I want you to know, Billy Ray Fats, that I always carried that 6-week training program in my life in music from my time with Power and beyond. Because you instilled in me what it took to be a professional entertainer. And I'm quite sure that Mr. Greenfield here can tell you more about that.
Oh yeah. I can remember the times. Oh man, come on. Over and over and over and over. And we had to do shows. We actually had to paint our basement windows, cause that's where we rehearsed at. So the neighborhood wouldn't disturb us. And we would actually have to come down the steps as if we was walking onto a stage.
Dress rehearsal.
Dress rehearsal. That's all we ever had.
Dress rehearsal.
Wasn't no just sitting around, you know, and wasn't no just going home and see you tomorrow. We had something to do. Then you had to come. You had to go home and sit at that record. If you was the bass player, or if you was the guitar player, or you was a vocal singer, or a drummer, you had to sit with that record and come to rehearsal, not rehearsing.
Right.
You can't sit at this record at rehearsal. You supposed to have learned this at home and come say, I got my part and let's come together. And that worked with us, but we were drilled, I would say groomed very well. I mean, very well on how, and not only just learning getting our music down, but how to act in public as entertainers, whereas we couldn't understand why when we had a break off the stage and we had to go back, why we couldn't just get off the stage and go out there and mingle, you know what I'm saying?
Go to the dressing room.
No, we were made to go, and we was like really disappointed. And I was mad. What you mean I can't go out there? You know, people saying power, power. Yeah. Well, the reason, which I believe was a good one now, is that the less they see you, the more they want you.
And the more they'll come back to see you again.
So the whole time we sit in the dressing room, we can actually hear this crowd, and there were like 4 or 5 other bands there. But when we got off stage and walked our way to the dressing room, we could actually hear the people out there yelling, "Power, power, power," and that was like, they calling for us.
Yeah.
That felt so good, and that come from, you know. And then my mother and them would do some really weird things to make us feel important. Was that, like, I remember one time we lived right here, and we had a show that was around the corner. And she actually rented a limousine, and everybody in the neighborhood would wonder, God, they must be going up, you know, they got limousines kind of pick them up. But it was all sight and sound. That's what we learned about being Power Band. That's why the name was changed from just Power Band to Power Band and Show, because we learned that it was more than just about sound, it was about sight. So we had different looks at each set. We would come out casual one set, and these diapers and wigs in the next set.
Oh, the diapers.
And the suits and all that, yeah. I remember,
It
man.
was the 70s.
It was the 70s, believe that. It was the time for it. I mean, you know, to try that and now would be like, you know.
Not now.
Not now. Don't try that now.
But you know, Lamont,
They got Lady Gaga for that.
yeah, let her out. But the times that I remember from being with Power and that 6-week course, and how Carol kept us carrying it after Fats was done with us.
Yeah.
And he was never really done with us. He was just grasshopper, move on.
Right.
You know.
And he had other things to do.
And he had other things to do. And what I can say now is this was over 30 years ago, and to this day, even though right now I sing in a choir and I'm a gospel singer, I still have the grace that goes along with that 6-week course, because I don't overdo showmanship, because ministry isn't about showmanship, it's about the spirit. But there's something that was instilled in me from that 6-week course that went all around the world with me, everywhere that I entertained, and now here at this point in my musical lifestyle, whatever I do for singing, it's just there. You know, it's humility. It's in a humbled way, in the way that I express it in gospel singing, but it still comes from that 6 weeks, and that 6 weeks stayed with me forever. It stayed with me forever. In fact, I want you to know that you did an excellent job, and I saw something on one of your blogs, whatever. You know, I'm old school, on the internet one time, and you were saying something about your 6-week course, and I was back there cheering for you, because I experienced it, I know about it, and I thank you for it, because I grew and I went around the world with it, and it was a blessing. So I think it's almost time to wrap this up. We can't keep people on the internet forever.
Because we could talk about this for years. I ain't talking about
days. Talking about, but
you have no idea.
From my heart, I want Carol Burnett to know I love you.
Love you, Mom.
I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Mom.
I will always call you Mom. You'll always be a part of my life. And Billy Ray.
Billy Ray. Wasn't for you.
Up. And all the fellas from Power Band and Show.
That's right.
I'm sending shout outs to you.
You all have raised a group of gentlemen.
Yes, you have.
No question.
And all of you guys that still doing music, God be with you.
Love you.
And all of you that just living your life, may God be with you.
Love you.
Thank you.
Peace.